This video analyzes the ethical activity of Senator Whitehouse on his March 3, 2009 comments versus his March 25, 2009 comments. What you're about to see is pervasive in the Democratic Party. And the tactics you're going to see became famous leading up to the stock market crash of 1929. This video highlights an exchange between Senator Whitehouse, a Democrat from Rhode Island, and Federal Reserve Chairman Bernanke on March 3, 2009 at a Senate Budget Committee meeting. There are 2 points to highlight concerning the use of a budget projection. The first is Senator Whitehouse comparing actual results to a budget projection without evaluating the projection's assumptions. In the world of financial analysis, Senator Whitehouse's analysis is meaningless. 2. Chairman Bernanke responds focusing on the unreasonable revenue assumptions in the projection and in the process discredits Senator Whitehouse.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks again, Chairman. Mr. Bernanke, during the course of this hearing, we've heard a number of my colleagues express real dismay about the amount of additional borrowing that's going to be required to address what I think all responsible economists concede is a fiscal emergency that the country is in, or certainly would be in without this. As I recall, at the end of the Clinton administration, we had an economy, a budget in surplus, and we were headed by most estimates, including CBO's, to be a debt-free nation. And then for 6 years, before control in Congress changed, you had Republicans controlling the House, the Senate, and the White House. And during that time, according to our projections, if you take the difference between the CBO projected budget on the day they took office and where things actually went, it's a $7.7 trillion difference, a $7.7 trillion hole that I refer to as the Bush debt, and that many of my colleagues supported at the time. We had a vice president who was at the time saying deficits don't matter. And now we hear these expressions of dismay about lending to solve this crisis from people who didn't seem to mind when $7.7 trillion in debt was being run up to finance tax cuts for the rich, to finance a war in Iraq, and other things. Looking back, do you believe it was prudent as a nation to have run up, as I calculated, the $7.7 trillion in debt during those six
It's a very complicated
years?
It's a very complicated calculation, Senator, and I can't do it all here, but I think the tax revenues in the late 90s were partly not sustainable. They came from the stock market boom, and we know now that that was not sustainable. So that was, I think, the idea that we would be debt-free, I think that was somewhat exaggerated. It's true that the revenue to GDP ratio did fall in the early part of the Bush presidency. It did come back up to something closer to historical averages. So it's a complicated issue.
Chairman Bernanke just informed Senator Whitehouse the CBO projections contained unsustainable assumptions, making the projected results irrelevant. Do you think Senator Whitehouse understood any of this? More importantly, do you think Senator Whitehouse wants to understand any of this? Folks, you need to understand that deception with budget projections is one of the best understood tactics in the accounting profession. What Senator Whitehouse is doing is using deception with a projection. Chairman Bernanke just informed him of the errors in his logic and the use of his projections, and now 3 weeks later, look what Senator Whitehouse says.
President Bush inherited multi-billion-dollar projected surpluses so large that they would have completely wiped out all non-government-held national debt by this very year. The difference between the budget baseline left by President Clinton and the one left to President Obama by President Bush is an astounding $8.9 trillion, an orgy of fair weather debt, the Bush debt.